What if you fully own your home, but someone else still controls what you can do with it? You paid off the mortgage. The deed is in your name. So why does the HOA still have power over you, and is there any legal way to escape? Before you try anything risky, here's the shocking truth most homeowners discover too late. Imagine this, you've finally done it. After years, maybe even decades of pinching pennies, budgeting every month, and sacrificing little luxuries, you've paid off your mortgage. That mountain of debt that hung over your head like a shadow is finally gone. You hold the deed in your hands. You walk through your home, every room echoing with a sense of liberation. And in that moment, you think to yourself, finally, I'm free. I can do whatever I want with my own house. It's a heady, intoxicating feeling. The very walls you've poured your sweat, tears, and money into now belong to you. You can paint, renovate, garden, whatever your heart desires. And for a fleeting moment, you let yourself imagine the ultimate freedom. You think about that backyard you've been dreaming of, a lush green space where your kids can play, where friends can gather, maybe even a pool or a deck. You picture painting your fence bright turquoise, adding a sunroom, or building that custom garage you've always wanted. In your mind, this is your home, your rules. But here, where the reality hits, hard, owning your home outright doesn't necessarily mean you're free, not really. Because there's something most homeowners never consider until it's too late. The HOA isn't powered by your mortgage. It doesn't care if you owe a single cent. Its authority doesn't come from the bank, the loan officer, or the fact that you finally scraped together every penny to pay off your house. Its power comes from the deed itself, and more specifically from what's called the CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Now, CC&Rs may sound like something buried in legalese, irrelevant to your everyday life. But in truth, they are the invisible chains that dictate what you can and cannot do on your property. They run with the land, which means they don't disappear when you pay off your mortgage. They don't disappear when you move in. They bind you and every future owner forever. Think about that for a moment. You've worked hard, you've sacrificed, you've achieved what so many dream of, total ownership of your home. And yet, there's a set of rules written in a document you probably glanced over years ago that can still control your every move. Let me give you a story. Imagine a homeowner, let's call her Sarah. Sarah bought her dream home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. She worked long hours, paid her mortgage diligently, and finally, after 12 years, that final check cleared. The mortgage company sent the official payoff letter. Sarah felt lighter than air. Freedom, liberation, joy. A week later, she decided to repaint her house. Not a subtle change, a bold, confident teal, something that made her smile every time she drove home. But 2 days later, an envelope arrived. Pause 1 sec for dramatic effect. Inside was a letter from her HOA. Violation notice, unauthorized exterior modification. Fine, $500 per day until compliance. You are required to repaint your home to the approved color within 14 days. Sarah froze, her freedom gone. The house was hers, but she didn't have the right to make the change she wanted. The rules were still in effect. And this, my friends, is the shock that so many homeowners never anticipate. HOAs, by design, maintain control over the aesthetic, architectural, and sometimes even functional aspects of your property. They enforce these rules through fines, legal notices, and in extreme cases, liens or court action. It doesn't matter that your mortgage is gone. It doesn't matter that you've invested your life savings into your home. Those CC&Rs are legally binding. And here's the kicker. Most homeowners only realize this when it's too late. They receive a violation notice, a fine, or a letter threatening legal action. And in that moment, the realization hits like a freight train. You don't fully control your own home. Not entirely. Let me take you further into Sarah's world. Imagine her sitting at her kitchen table, the letter in front of her, staring at the bold words, $500 per day until compliance. Panic sets in. She starts calling neighbors, hoping someone will say, "Oh, it's fine, just do it." But everyone else is quietly obeying the rules. She realizes the HOA has power not just because of the rules themselves, but because the entire neighborhood enforces them collectively. She tries to reason with the board. "I own my home, I should be able to choose my paint color," she says. The board politely explains that the rules apply to every property. Exceptions aren't made lightly. The freedom she assumed was hers, suddenly it feels like an illusion. This is why the misconception exists. The line between ownership and true control is blurred. Paying off your mortgage brings financial freedom, but it doesn't erase the legal and communal obligations embedded in the deed. The CC&Rs remain. The HOA's authority remains. So if you're thinking, "I own the house, I can do what I want," pause for a second and think again. True freedom isn't just about paying off the mortgage. It's about understanding the legal framework that governs your property, the rules that bind it, and the authority that can enforce them. Tone dramatic, slow. Because here's the truth. For most homeowners, the moment they fully own their home is when the HOA's power becomes crystal clear. The deed is yours, but control, that's still partly theirs. And Sarah, she spent months learning this lesson the hard way, through fines, letters, and frustrating negotiations. She realized freedom is not just in owning the home. Freedom is in understanding the rules, the legal bindings, and the landscape she is navigating. Owning a home doesn't mean freedom from responsibility. It doesn't mean freedom from authority. It doesn't even mean freedom from rules that can affect your daily life. That, my friends, is the big misconception most homeowners never see coming. So now that we understand the illusion of freedom in owning a home outright, let's talk about the real nightmare, escaping the HOA. You might think, "I own my house. I paid every cent of my mortgage. Surely I can just ignore the HOA if I don't like their rules." That, my friends, is where reality hits like a brick wall. HOAs aren't optional. They aren't like a cable subscription you can cancel. In most communities, membership is mandatory, legally binding, and enforceable. The structure of a typical HOA is simple but powerful. Each homeowner in the community signs, or unknowingly agrees to, CC&Rs when they buy their home. Those rules don't just vanish. They don't disappear when you pay off your mortgage, and they certainly don't disappear if you decide you don't feel like following them. Imagine this scenario. You install a small shed in your backyard to store your tools. It's practical, necessary even. But your HOA has rules about structure, height, placement, and aesthetics. They notice. Within days, you receive a notice. Violation, unauthorized structure. Fine, $200 per day until removed or compliant. Now, $200 might not seem like much, but day after day, week after week, that fine accumulates. In a month, it's over $6,000, and if you ignore it, the HOA can escalate, placing a lien on your property. Suddenly, your home, which you thought was free, is tethered to legal and financial consequences. Let's step into another homeowner's story, James. James thought he could quietly ignore the HOA rules about landscaping. He liked his wild, natural garden. But his HOA had strict guidelines, manicured lawns, no overgrown plants. James refused to comply. Within weeks, he got repeated notices, late fees, and then a lien. He realized too late that ignoring the HOA isn't harmless, it's dangerous. The real problem is that HOAs are designed to enforce compliance, not negotiate freedom. Their legal authority is backed by the courts in most states. Fines, liens, and in extreme cases, even foreclosure are tools in their arsenal. Imagine trying to sell your home while ignoring the HOA. That lien prevents a clean sale. The buyer sees unpaid fines and legal threats and the deal falls through. Or imagine refinancing your mortgage. The bank sees the HOA lien and denies approval. Your financial freedom compromised. And it's not just individual homeowners at risk. HOAs exist to maintain the entire neighborhood. Their power comes not only from legal enforcement, but from collective agreement. Each homeowner's compliance supports the rules that protect property values, aesthetics, and communal amenities. So when one homeowner tries to escape, it threatens the stability of the entire HOA. That's why boards fight hard to keep rules enforced. Your attempts to opt out aren't just brushed aside, they're actively blocked. Let me paint a picture. Laura, a homeowner in a gated community, decided she didn't want to follow a minor HOA rule, painting her door a bold red instead of the approved muted palette. At first, she thought it harmless, but the HOA issued a formal violation. They fined her repeatedly, sent legal letters, and eventually threatened foreclosure. She tried to argue her case, but the board insisted, rules are for everyone, no exceptions. Laura's frustration grew. She realized the HOA's power isn't theoretical, it's enforceable. Owning the house doesn't make you immune. Paying off the mortgage doesn't grant exceptions. The HOA's authority is legally embedded, and ignoring it is like swimming against a powerful current. HOAs have multiple enforcement tools. Fines, daily or monthly penalties for violations. They snowball quickly. Liens, legal claims on your property that can block sales or refinancing. Legal action or foreclosure, in extreme cases if fines remain unpaid. Each tool is backed by law in most states, giving HOAs enormous leverage. And here's the psychological impact. Homeowners often feel trapped. They thought ownership equals freedom, but instead they face a system designed to control behavior, enforce compliance, and protect collective interests. Resistance is possible but comes with high financial, legal, and emotional costs. Let's take one last example. Michael thought he could quietly challenge his HOA over a minor fence height issue. He refused to adjust it. Months of legal letters followed. He spent thousands on attorneys and court fees. By the time the case was resolved, the emotional toll, stress, sleepless nights, anxiety, was far heavier than any fine could measure. Michael realized that escaping or ignoring the HOA isn't just hard, it's a battle most homeowners aren't prepared for. The truth is simple but harsh. HOAs are powerful, legally backed, and designed to enforce rules. Paying off your mortgage doesn't nullify that power. Ignoring it invites fines, liens, and legal battles. Trying to fight it without understanding the system can be catastrophic. So what's the takeaway? Ownership is not the same as freedom. Your house may belong to you, but the rules that govern it do not disappear. The HOA's authority is not optional. It's real, enforceable, and far-reaching. Understanding this is the first step to navigating life as a homeowner, and the first step toward any hope of real freedom. Because the real problem isn't just that escaping is hard. The problem is that most homeowners don't even realize how hard it really is, until they're trapped in fines, legal threats, and emotional stress they never anticipated. So far, we've seen the harsh reality. Paying off your mortgage doesn't make you free. Ignoring the HOA isn't an option. Legal battles are expensive. Fines can accumulate. Liens can tie your house down. Foreclosure, it's possible. But amidst all this, there's a glimmer of hope. Rare, yes, but it exists. Some homeowners have found ways to escape HOA control. And while these cases are exceptions rather than the rule, they offer a roadmap for anyone willing to navigate a complex legal and social landscape. Let's start with the first situation, HOA dissolution. Imagine a neighborhood where enough homeowners band together to dissolve the HOA entirely. It sounds like a dream. No more fines, no more restrictive rules, complete freedom to live as you wish. But here's the catch. HOAs are legal entities. Dissolving one requires an overwhelming majority, sometimes 67%, often 90% of homeowners must agree. Picture Sarah again, not the same Sarah from point one, but a different homeowner with the same dream. She realized her HOA had become oppressive. The only real way out, dissolve the board legally. She spent months gathering signatures, hosting meetings, writing emails, and holding community forums. Some neighbors resisted, afraid of losing their property values or community benefits. Conflicts arose, friendships strained, tempers flared. Months turned into a year. After countless meetings, legal consultations, and heated debates, she barely reached the required supermajority. The HOA dissolved. Sarah finally experienced real freedom, but the journey was grueling, long, and emotionally taxing. This illustrates the first principle. Escaping via HOA dissolution is possible, but only if the community unites. One determined homeowner alone cannot dissolve an HOA. The second rare scenario involves mistakes, paperwork mistakes. Sometimes HOAs mistakenly include a property that was never legally annexed, or perhaps the deed contains errors that create legal loopholes. Meet Michael. He bought a home in a brand new development. Years later, he discovered that the HOA never properly recorded his property as part of the community. An attorney confirmed the oversight. Legally, he might not be bound by the CC&Rs. Michael spent months preparing documentation, meeting lawyers, reviewing county records, and writing appeals. Eventually, the HOA reluctantly agreed he could operate outside certain restrictions. But let's be clear, this situation is extremely rare. Most homeowners won't find loopholes in legal documents. Success depends on meticulous research, skilled legal counsel, and timing. A third method involves de-annexation agreements. Some HOAs allow a property to leave the community if both the board and the neighbors approve. But approval is rare because every homeowner contributes to the HOA's revenue and enforcement power. Losing a member can threaten budgets, amenities, and the entire system. Consider Jessica, a homeowner in a coastal HOA. She wanted to leave because she disliked strict landscaping rules and repetitive fines. She petitioned the board, presented her case, and negotiated with neighbors. For months, she faced rejection, skepticism, and resistance. Finally, after careful negotiation and demonstrating how her departure wouldn't disrupt finances, the board granted approval. Jessica's story proves it's possible, but it requires strategy, patience, and diplomacy. Most homeowners trying this alone fail without community support. Some states have legal quirks or loopholes that homeowners can leverage. Perhaps a law limits the duration of fines or permits certain deviations from CC&Rs under specific conditions. Take David, who lived in a state where CC&Rs couldn't be enforced if fines exceeded a certain percentage of property value. He discovered this loophole after reading statutes and consulting attorneys. By leveraging this law, he successfully challenged excessive fines and gained temporary relief from restrictive rules. Pause 2 sec, tone advisory. But beware, these loopholes are technical, specific, and rare. Missteps can lead to fines, legal retaliation, or court rejection. Expert guidance is almost always required. So what does this tell us? Freedom from an HOA is possible, but only under rare and specific circumstances. Community action through HOA dissolution. Legal errors or mistakes in annexation or title. Board-approved de-annexation with careful negotiation. State-specific legal loopholes carefully leveraged. Each example we've explored required persistence, strategy, and often a combination of luck and legal expertise. For most homeowners, escaping an HOA isn't as simple as walking away. It's a complex, high-stakes journey. And here, the key insight. Knowing these possibilities exists doesn't mean they're easy to achieve. But awareness is the first step. If you understand the options, the rules, and the rare exceptions, you can make informed decisions, whether that's negotiating, planning strategically, or ultimately deciding to move. Because escaping an HOA is never about brute force or rebellion. It's about knowledge, patience, community support, and sometimes leveraging very specific legal circumstances. So far, we've explored the illusion of freedom and the rare, difficult ways to escape an HOA. Now, let's consider the temptation that almost every homeowner faces at some point, ignoring the HOA altogether. You might think, I paid my mortgage, I own my home, who's going to stop me from doing what I want? That's the dangerous illusion. Because ignoring the HOA is not just risky, it's a fast track to financial and legal trouble. Imagine Mark, a homeowner who wanted to install a small above-ground pool in his backyard. He knew the HOA had strict rules, but he figured, it's just a pool, it won't matter. Within days, he received a letter, Violation, unauthorized pool, fine $100 per day until removal. He shrugged it off. $100 a day didn't seem catastrophic. But here's how the fines escalate. HOAs often charge daily penalties. $100 a day quickly becomes $700 a week. 1 month later, Mark owes nearly $3,000, and that's just for a single small violation. Ignore it further and the HOA can escalate, liens on your property. That means the HOA can legally claim your home as collateral until you pay the fines. Want to sell your home? Good luck. Want to refinance? The bank sees the lien and refuses. Suddenly, your freedom is costing you thousands and blocking financial moves. But the danger doesn't stop at fines. Ignoring the HOA can quickly turn into legal action. Some HOAs, especially in states that enforce CC&Rs strictly, can take you to court, or in extreme cases, push for foreclosure, even if you own your mortgage-free home. Consider Emily, who ignored multiple HOA notices about her backyard landscaping. She believed she could negotiate later. Months passed. Notices turned into fines, fines turned into liens, and then the HOA filed a legal complaint. Court dates, attorney fees, stress, and mounting bills followed. What started as a minor dispute over flowers and shrubs turned into a months-long legal nightmare. And here's the psychological toll. Homeowners often feel powerless. They thought ownership meant autonomy, but ignoring rules results in stress, sleepless nights, and fear of losing their most valuable asset, their home. Why ignoring the HOA is a trap. The problem is structural. HOAs are not casual social clubs. They are legally structured entities. Their governing documents allow them to impose fines, daily, weekly, or monthly, until compliance is achieved. Place liens, claim your property to recover fines. Initiate legal action, from civil lawsuits to foreclosure in extreme cases. These tools are powerful because they're enforceable in courts. Unlike a friendly warning, an HOA's actions are backed by law in almost every state. Take Tony, for instance. He ignored minor exterior violations for months. First came the $50 per day fines, then letters escalated, then a lien, finally legal action. By the time he realized the severity, he owed over $10,000, the pool he thought would be harmless, now a symbol of stress, debt, and frustration. Common misconceptions about ignoring rules. If I ignore them, they can't enforce rules. Wrong. Enforcement is legal and binding. They'll forget about small things. Wrong. HOAs often track violations meticulously. I can negotiate later. Sometimes, but only if you haven't ignored multiple notices. Once fines and liens accumulate, negotiation becomes difficult. Jessica thought she could ignore her HOA's paint color rules. A month later, fines accumulated. 2 months later, she faced a lien. By ignoring the problem, she had transformed a minor dispute into a full-blown crisis. It's not just the money. The emotional toll is heavy: stress, anxiety, conflict with neighbors, and sleepless nights. Imagine dreading your mailbox, your phone ringing, or the HOA's emails. Imagine feeling trapped in your own home, the one place you expected safety and comfort. Ignoring the HOA is like walking on a tightrope without a safety net. One wrong step, and fines, legal action, or even foreclosure could follow. And most homeowners aren't prepared for the complex, escalating consequences of inaction. So here's the harsh truth. Ignoring the HOA is rarely a solution. Freedom doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from knowledge, strategy, and proactive management. If you want to avoid fines, liens, or court battles, you need to understand your HOA rules thoroughly. Address potential violations proactively. Negotiate early, before fines accumulate. Seek legal advice if necessary. Because the moment you ignore your HOA, the problem grows exponentially. What seems like a small act of independence can quickly become a financial and legal nightmare. Remember, your mortgage-free home may belong to you, but control. That's still shared with the HOA, and ignoring it is a gamble you almost always lose. So far, we've explored the illusion of freedom, the dangers of ignoring the HOA, and the rare scenarios where escape might be possible. But here's the most important point for every homeowner listening. Escaping the HOA isn't the only path to freedom. Sometimes the smartest approach isn't fighting. It's working within the system, leveraging knowledge and negotiating strategically. The first, and often most effective, strategy is to join the HOA board or actively participate in community elections. If you can influence decisions, you can reduce restrictions, adjust policies, and prevent unnecessary fines before they happen. Take Maria, for example. She moved into a strict HOA neighborhood with dozens of rules about paint colors, landscaping, and outdoor decorations. Instead of fighting, she ran for a position on the board. She listened to neighbors, suggested reasonable updates, and gradually helped change outdated policies. Within a year, homeowners could submit requests for exceptions without facing fines. By working from the inside, Maria didn't just protect herself. She improved life for her entire community. This approach requires patience, collaboration, and political skill, but it's far safer and more effective than rebellion or ignoring rules. Another strategy is to formally request variances or exceptions. Many HOAs allow deviations from rules if you submit a proposal and follow a process. Imagine Liam, who wanted to build a small garden shed taller than the HOA allowed. Instead of ignoring the rules, he submitted a detailed variance request, architectural drawings, explanations of purpose, and assurances it wouldn't affect neighbors' views. After a few meetings, the board approved it. Liam avoided fines, stress, and legal complications, all while achieving exactly what he wanted. The lesson: most HOA boards aren't unreasonable. They respond to well-prepared, respectful requests. Variances and exceptions are often the simplest path to personal freedom without confrontation. Waiting until fines or violations accumulate is a trap. Instead, communicate early. Document everything: emails, proposals, and approvals. Negotiation works best before the problem escalates. Consider Sophia, who wanted to install a deck slightly outside the HOA's standard dimensions. She contacted the board in advance, provided plans, and discussed options openly. The board appreciated her transparency and approved her deck with minor adjustments. Had Sophia waited and built the deck without permission, she would have faced fines, letters, and potential legal action. Early negotiation avoided all of that, saving money, stress, and months of headaches. Sometimes working within the HOA isn't enough. If rules remain too restrictive, consider a strategic exit, moving to a property without HOA control or one with more lenient policies. Tom and his family loved their home but hated constant fines and restrictions. They carefully researched neighborhoods, factoring in HOA rules, community amenities, and property values. After a year of planning, they sold their home at a profit and moved to a more flexible community. This approach allows you to preserve freedom and peace of mind without battling legal issues or risking fines. It's not always ideal, but when executed strategically, it's often the most practical solution. Finally, the most important tool you have is knowledge. Understanding your HOA rules, state laws, and potential legal options gives you leverage, confidence, and protection. Take Raj, who spent weeks studying his HOA's CC&Rs. He documented ambiguous clauses, researched state statutes, and consulted an attorney. When the HOA tried to fine him for a minor landscaping change, he presented his research calmly and avoided fines. Knowledge didn't just save him money, it gave him peace of mind. Being informed allows you to act strategically rather than react emotionally. It turns the HOA from a source of stress into a manageable system you can navigate intelligently. So what can we learn from all of this? Participate in governance, join the board, or vote to influence rules. Request variances. Submit proposals respectfully to avoid fines. Negotiate early. Communicate before problems escalate. Plan an exit strategically. Move if the HOA environment is unbearable. Educate yourself. Knowledge of rules and laws is your greatest weapon. Freedom doesn't always come from escaping. It comes from understanding, strategy, and proactive action. Owning a home in an HOA community doesn't have to feel like a cage. By taking the right steps, you can live comfortably, avoid fines, and maintain peace of mind, all without resorting to risky rebellion. If this guide opened your eyes, imagine what else your HOA isn't telling you. Click subscribe, hit the bell, and don't miss our next video, where we reveal 5 secret loopholes HOAs don't want homeowners to know about. Trust me, these are game changers.